I don't have a stressful job, like I don't have stress. But then sometimes those women will, have stress erupting that they don't understand. One thing to keep in mind is that your body doesn't know the difference between stress that you notice and stress that you don't feel.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby.
Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark. My mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Most of all, I want you to wake up. With functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm welcoming Laura Paris to the podcast, and we're digging into the connection between migraines and your fertility. Laura Paris is a licensed acupuncturist and functional medicine practitioner in Monterey, California. She specializes in women's health. Laura works with women in person as well as via remote consults. In addition, she teaches online hormone reset programs with her colleague, Dr. Anita Sadate, a functional medicine gynecologist. Currently, they offer a 6-week program called PCOS Solution. The next program starts January the 12th, 2019. You can go to myhormoneanswers.com to learn more. Laura writes extensively. You can read her articles and learn more about her at parishealingarts.com. And before we jump into today's show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this to make sure you never miss an episode.
Hey, Laura, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you could share with us your journey and really how you came to do this work.
So my journey is that my background was that I wanted to study integrative medicine after I got out of college, but there were a lot of things I was interested in. And really what I was interested in was functional medicine, but it didn't exist, or at least it wasn't called that at the time. There were different forms of, natural medicine or integrative medicine, but it wasn't called functional.
Right.
So first I went to study acupuncture and Chinese medicine and became licensed in that. And then when I was done with that, there were more opportunities to study functional medicine, and the sort of field was growing. So since then, I've done several trainings in functional medicine, and I do both, primarily working with women. And my clinic is in Monterey, California, but I work with women over the phone for functional medicine or by video. And so I do, with some women, I do both. And obviously that's local women. And then other women will come just for one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to have the acupuncture as a hands-on tool.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Yeah, we definitely kind of recommend that from Dr. Oz, that healing roundtable where you have your different practitioners around it, your RE, your OBGYN, your health coach, your fertility coach, your nutritionist, your acupuncturist, like everyone kind of at the table, but then the person is in the center and they're the conductor of the healing. So it's to have those people around you. Awesome. So so today we're going to be digging into migraines, and really I get a lot of people that come to us and are suffering with migraines plus infertility. So I just wanted to highlight this connection and really dig into this today as to some possible causes for this. And you've written a lot on this subject on your blog, in 4 separate blogs, but I just wanted to go through it today and get your take on some of these different issues. So with migraines and infertility, what could be the connection here? Massive question, but
yeah, it's a great question. And I also just want to mention, I love the work that you're doing. And I've specialized in working with women with infertility as well for a long time. So it's definitely a really dear topic to me.
Yeah.
And first of all, I want to say that, so migraines do, I think you get questions about, women who have infertility and then also have migraines and don't realize that there could be a connection. So I just want to say before we start that migraines are not going to cause infertility, right? But the connections could be when we start digging into the root causes of infertility, which I know you do. We can find that those root causes whether they're hormonal imbalances or gut issues, are root causes that can also cause migraines. So like in functional medicine and functional nutrition, when we kind of unravel what the root causes of something is, we often find that these constellation of symptoms are all connected and related by, one or more root causes. So that's basically the connection. And for any woman with infertility, she may have different root causes that are creating migraines. And I hope that we can kind of go through the different common ones in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first one we have is really the migraine that's triggered by hormones or potentially some estrogen dominance going on, or I guess, the cycle too.
Definitely. So it's super common, as probably most of your listeners know who have migraines, to get migraines either kind of during your period, like right before, or maybe during ovulation. So those are really common, and those are lumped into hormonal migraines. The cause of those is the hormone fluctuations are a trigger for headaches. And so they can happen anytime that hormones go through a lot of fluctuation. So not just actually cycle related, but for women going into perimenopause and having a lot of hormone fluctuations, migraines can kick up then. And one of the reasons for that is that there's an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone, and specifically what we call estrogen dominance, which is estrogen is greater than its complementary hormone progesterone. But sometimes it's also just the instability of being able to handle the hormone fluctuations that causes the headache. And it's not an estrogen dominant picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if it was linked to menstruation, what would it be? What would be the trigger in there then? So that's more hormonal. So it doesn't necessarily need to be around the period. Where are you seeing it kind of with menstruation?
Yeah, menstruation headaches, menstrual migraines have their own separate diagnosis. And those are specifically happening right before your period and right during your period and no other time in your cycle. And, it's a little edgy because I don't get really too concerned if a woman has mostly menstrual migraines and a couple of times ovulation ones. But just in the medical literature, the menstrual migraine is a separate diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So, and what happens during menstruation is that there's basically more inflammation in your uterine lining, and specifically prostaglandins. And prostaglandins are the kind of inflammation that you put out basically with Motrin or Advil or ibuprofen. So if you get a migraine during menstruation and you get helped by using those medications, it's, showing that that's dampening the prostaglandins in your uterine lining. And we all get more prostaglandins during menstruation, but the research shows that women with menstrual migraines have higher levels. And we don't know why, but that they make more inflammation. But so one of the natural solutions we use to that, and should I jump into solutions as we go along, or?
Yeah, sure. If you want, we can. Yeah, definitely. Because there's different ones that we're going to talk about. Yeah. So if you've got some solutions here for the menstrual migraine, sure.
Okay. Research shows that vitamin E works really well to dampen those prostaglandins, and specifically taking 400 IUs of vitamin E for 5 days during menstruation. So I recommend starting normally when you maybe the day before you would typically feel a headache, and then just continue for 5 days. And I've actually seen pretty good results with that. And women being able to avoid then taking other medications.
Okay, so 400 IUs of vitamin E for before the day before the period.
Yeah, or the day before you think, because a menstrual migraine can technically start a couple days before your period.
Okay.
And most women know, if they're habitual, like you start feeling, it coming on, or else if you're tracking your cycle and your headaches and like, oh yeah, my cycle's coming this day, 2 days before I usually get a migraine. So you maybe start vitamin E the day before that.
Okay.
But it's not something you have to take all month, according to research.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about blood sugar regulation and migraines?
So that's another good look at how hormones can affect migraines. And then I also want to mention a little bit about histamine at some point, which can fit in. It can fit into hormones and it can fit into allergies.
Okay.
So blood sugar regulation really is a hormone issue because your blood sugar is regulated by insulin, which is a hormone. And when big fluctuations in blood sugar will cause big fluctuations in insulin, which insulin's job is to manage your blood sugar. And so women it can be a migraine trigger to go too long without food, and then create, just the blood sugar fluctuations going too low, or having something high in sugar where sugar goes too high. So basically, again, we're looking at stability instead of kind of wild fluctuations. So if you just think that going too long without eating could be challenging, but then also having something, high in sugar could also be challenging, or high in refined carbohydrates from, white flour and things that are that turn into sugar, basically, can also be challenging to that system of blood sugar regulation. So a lot of women will have that on their list of migraine triggers. Is like, I know I can't, I went too long without eating and then my blood sugar dropped. Or else maybe they had like a really rich dessert and that triggered it. So.
Yeah. And also sleep dysregulation can then impact your blood sugar the entire next day. So looking at sleep too as to potentially a cause of why the whole blood sugar discussion is a whole other discussion in itself. But being aware of those triggers, and if you're feeling that hangry or you're feeling things dipping throughout the day, that could be, as you're saying, a trigger for the migraines. And so to keep that balance, obviously, then would be the goal there.
Exactly. Yeah. So just like keeping your meals balanced with protein, fat, a reasonable amount of like whole food carbohydrates, avoiding, lot heavy sugar and going too long without food is a good way to go. And I'll often have women, they've already gotten to the migraine and then they'll track back like, oh yeah. And then they'll realize that happened. And then, like you said, maybe sleep was bad, maybe there was a third trigger and it just was kind of the perfect storm.
And that leads into the next one, which is stress. And everyone here lives a completely stress-free life. So so stress and the effect on migraines.
Yeah. And it's so interesting about stress too, because a lot of people think I don't have stress. My life is perfect. Like, I hear that where it's like, my life is, I'm so blessed. We're okay financially. Nobody's sick. Like I don't have a stressful job. Like I don't have stress. But then sometimes those women will, have stress erupting that they don't understand. And so one thing to keep in mind is that your body doesn't know the difference between stress that you notice and stress that you don't feel, right? So stress that you don't feel could be from things going on inside your body. Like, let's say if you have a gut infection or dysbiosis, that's going to cause physical stress on your body, and your body doesn't know the difference between stressing in your mind mentally and then a physical stress going on in your body. So it's always good to evaluate stress, even with people who feel like they don't have any. And I've learned that over the years. But in stress and headaches we all hear that stress can contribute to just about everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that's true. But there's actually mechanisms how that happens. And stress can cause first of all, like, wild fluctuations with your first responder stress hormones. So that's what we think of as adrenaline. And then the second responder is when that's chronic, then cortisol goes up. And then when that happens and that becomes chronic, then the system starts to become dysregulated. And this is something that we can evaluate through testing. I know you do the Dutch hormone test, and that's a really good evaluation of how stress hormones are doing. And then do things to help mitigate that. But it goes back to kind of when any hormone system in our body is dysregulated and there's, kind of uncontrolled fluctuations, that can be what triggers a headache.
Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about stressors too. So it's like mainly we think of the mental emotional, but it could be food sensitivities, could be gut infections, could be environmental toxins, could be a structural stressors. Maybe you have a pinched nerve or something out of alignment, and all these could be causing stress on your body. And maybe you're just operating at a level 5 of, out of a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it's at a 5, and you just think everything's good. But if there's a little fire burning along in there, it's just to be able to see if you've looked at all those different categories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I've had some cases recently of, I don't know if it's because of what's going on in the world today or what, but I've had a lot of really high stress anxiety patients lately who don't understand it. Like they're, think of themselves as chill people. Their lives are good, but they're having anxiety attacks and they don't understand why. And so it's been interesting to unravel, what could be causing that, which could be a whole bunch of different things going on internally, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the mitochondria and migraines, and what's the connection there, and what exactly is mitochondria? I've actually got an episode. It'll probably going in the next month or so, and we go deep into the mitochondria. But briefly, what is it?
Oh, that's great that you're doing that. So mitochondria, it's becoming a little bit more of a popular word lately because just there's more attention to it. But mitochondria are little organelles in every cell in your body, and they basically make energy for your cell to work. And the energy is called ATP. And we don't really think about this because it's just something, that just goes on, in our body. We don't necessarily feel like, oh, my mitochondria are not well today, but it can happen that there's different types of mitochondrial dysfunction. So there's more serious kinds that are genetic. And then there's the types where the mitochondria just get damaged from pollutants, chemicals, what we call oxidative stress, medications. So there's a bunch of different things that can damage mitochondria and make them not be able to work as well, or even reduce them in number. And then there's also mitochondrial nutrient deficiency. So your mitochondria need a certain number of nutrients, specific nutrients, to be able to function. And if those are low, that could affect their ability to produce your energy. And then how this goes to migraines is that apparently there's been quite a bit of research showing that if you have a low production of this mitochondrial energy called ATP in your nerve cells specifically, so in the cells of your nervous system, your brain and your nerves, it lowers your threshold for migraines. So if you're already susceptible to migraines and you have a low ATP production, that makes you even more susceptible. And so some studies have taken the nutrients that feed mitochondria and found that they lessen migraine frequency or prevent migraines. And we can talk about some specific nutrients right now if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so one study showed, so the mitochondrial nutrients are the B vitamins, but specifically riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, and then coenzyme Q10, magnesium, niacin, which is another B vitamin, carnitine, which the best source of that food-wise is meat, and lipoic acid. And so one study showed that by taking 100 milligrams of CoQ10 3 times per day prevented migraines. And another study showed that 400 milligrams per day of riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, lessened migraines.
Yeah, and for egg health, usually typically ubiquinol or CoQ10. So a lot of people are already taking that, and the riboflavin.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So those can be a good part of a hormonal program when migraines are part of the picture, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into the MTHFR and kind of talk about that with methylation. Okay, so the next one we're kind of look at would be gut health. So we talk a lot about gut health. I'm sure you do as well. And this is kind of like the cornerstone of everything to see, potentially is there intestinal permeability or leaky gut, and is that what actually is then triggering migraines?
Yes, it's a great topic. So there's different ways that can happen, and for sure leaky gut can be a migraine trigger, and it's one of the first places to go. And basically one of the ways is the toxins from the bacteria. If you have if you have leaky gut, it's pretty sure that you have some level of dysbiosis, because leaky gut is normally caused by dysbiosis. And just to summarize for people, dysbiosis, either we're talking about the trillions of bacteria, microbes in your gut, and dysbiosis can be an overgrowth of microbes that are undesirable, or it can be an undergrowth of microbes that you want. So it's kind of like, I look at it like a garden, and dysbiosis is maybe there's too many weeds and not enough good plants. And what happens with that is that the overgrowths of inflammatory microbes cause toxic byproducts. So they're called LPS endotoxins. And they will get through into your bloodstream. They'll get through for anybody, but with leaky gut, they'll get through more. And they can cause just widespread pain and inflammation throughout your body, including your brain. We look to this for lots of people with different kinds of pain, including menstrual pain, including fibromyalgia. But the proteins that control gut permeability are also control your blood-brain barrier permeability. So if you have leaky gut, you may have a degree of leaky brain, and endotoxins can get into your brain and cause inflammation, and that will trigger a migraine. And not just the endotoxins. If you have leaky brain, there's other things that can get into your brain and irritate it and cause inflammation.
Yeah, and a lot of people that have been on hormonal birth control pill, that can impact the health of your gut and also your nutrient levels, which then can set you up for potentially leaky gut, and then food sensitivities, gut infections. So it just kind of spirals from there. So looking at, maybe start with alcohol. Obviously for fertility, we recommend to decrease as much as possible or eliminate. But there's actually, what's your take on that as far as some of the top types of alcohol that are not recommended for gut health?
It could be, depending on the person, it could vary, right? Because some types of alcohol are going to be high in histamine or yeast or other allergens. So they're going to be worse for certain people that have those sensitivities. We think of like red wine as a healthier alcohol because it actually does have some really nutritious properties to it with the flavonoids. However, if somebody is sensitive to the yeast and histamine sensitive, they might, it's classic to get a really whopping migraine after red wine. So as far as gut health, when we think of liver toxicity, which affects the gut, it's really the amount of alcohol that you're taking in. So if you're taking in, a lot of hard alcohol, that's going to be more challenging for your liver. But if you're doing just let's say if you're going to do one drink on a special occasion, because I'm a firm believer in not having everything be completely black and white.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's say, on Thanksgiving, you want to have one drink. A lot of people do better with vodka tends to be a cleaner alcohol in terms of having things that cause headaches. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about migraines, I think people tend to do best with vodka, and then not putting a bunch of sugary stuff in it. So something like vodka and cranberry juice, or even a martini for headaches, right? But for gut health, vodka is definitely going to increase leaky gut. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a catch-22. Kind of pick your least harmful beverage.
That's right.
But yeah, on that note, I really like women who are dealing with infertility. I think reducing stress is so important. And so I'm not saying like, oh, they should have a couple glasses of wine every night to reduce their stress, but also to not get too obsessive about, oh my God, I had that glass of wine on Thanksgiving, and is that why this cycle didn't work? Or yeah.
The stress around that, or if you had a wine or some vodka and like one drink, the stress and beating yourself up afterwards is more harmful. So enjoy. Yeah, and so we look at food sensitivities a lot. We look at elimination diet, so we're taking out dairy, gluten, soy, corn, peanuts, and eggs. Or at the so that's to kind of fit, and then systematically reintroduce it over the course of 30 days to see how each food impacts your body. And then also, what about constipation? A lot of women, I think more women than men experience constipation. I'm not sure if that is actually a true stat, but that's kind of what I see. What's the link with that and gut health?
Yeah. So, constipation obviously feels horrible, and it's, clear that it would make you more toxic because you're not eliminating, right? Because that's how we eliminate the majority of our toxins. So nobody likes constipation, and our definition of it is, changing. Like medically, it was kind of crazy. Like if you don't poop once a week, if you poop once a week, you're okay. And, like, no. Like really, daily and at least one complete bowel movement per day that when it feels complete. And, I love it when I hear women say, oh, just one? I have 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. But what the majority of our poop is basically our gut microbes. So if there's constipation, we have to look at dysbiosis and check out the microbiome for sure. And often it's small intestine bacterial overgrowth that will cause constipation, especially if it's a methane gas producing bacteria. Mm-hmm. So they tend to cause methane dominant causes constipation more. And then the first thing that I look at with constipation is magnesium, because I think that so many women are really deficient in magnesium, and that it's low in our soils. So even when we eat foods with magnesium, I just think we're not getting enough. So that besides, the first 2 things I'll look at is gut microbiome and magnesium intake. And often those 2 things alone will be enough to resolve it.
Yeah, I had Dr. Carolyn Dean on the podcast, episode 42, and she's a magnesium expert and functional doc, and talked about, I'm not sure she's a functional doctor, but she's a doctor with many degrees after her name, and talks about the benefits of magnesium, and that we're about 85% of us are deficient. And yeah, if you got those leg cramps or eye twitches, which yes, I had those, and then started adding in magnesium, like, oh, okay. But getting to the root cause too, which again is leaky gut. And then in this case too, the piece about the leaky brain, I think a lot of people have heard about leaky gut, and we talked there about leaky brain. I don't think many people have heard about leaky brain, and then that being a trigger for migraine, and maybe the gut brain connection, or the food mood, all this stuff. We're in a society right now where we like to prescribe anti-anxiety or antidepressants and things like that, whereas getting to the crux of it is looking at the gut health and the connection to the brain.
Yeah. And we're like, we recognize that there's a lot of connections between the nervous system in the gut and the brain. And we're starting to understand some of them and some we don't, but it's very acknowledged in science and in medicine that there's a strong connection. And the brain barrier, yeah, that's something we don't talk about so much, but there's actually a test that you can do to the main enzymes that tend to break down the brain barrier are called MMP, and it stands for matrix metalloproteinases, but just think MMP. And you can do a blood test to measure those. And if they're high, it shows that something's going on, with your brain. They should be in the right, you need them actually, because they're part of remodeling your brain. So you need these enzymes. They're important, but you don't want them to be high, because if they're high, it shows that there's some inflammation going on and perhaps like a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. So that could be caused from different things, but it is a real thing. It's not like a made-up thing that, people in holistic medicine have come up with. It's, a leaky or impaired or damaged blood-brain barrier is definitely a thing.
So MMP to test for that.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
The regular labs will test for that. LabCorp, Quest, those labs. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then the environment being a trigger for migraines as well. So there's like wind and barometric pressure and sun exposure and pollutants and mold and all those sorts of things. What are some tips to help us there?
Yeah. So often getting to know the triggers is a really good start. So if you just start figuring out like, well, what happened in the 24 hours before the headache? Because if you're experiencing a headache that's not related to your period or ovulation, it doesn't seem hormonal. And sometimes, hormonal headaches can have other triggers as well. And sometimes, like I said before, there can be enough triggers that creates a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can control some of the triggers, then you might not get to that place, right? So some things we can't control about the environment. So barometric pressure changes are really big for people. But what you can try to do is have your indoor climate and humidity be more like your outdoor. And I know in some places that's not completely possible, but it's more about humidity than it is about temperature. So let's say if it's super humid outside and you make your inside really dry, then that mismatch could cause a migraine as you go in and out. And so I have some people like that where the weather is, more humid outside, and then they go into a really dry, air-conditioned workspace, and then they'll get a headache just because of that climate shift. So as much as you have control over balancing your indoor and outdoor, and some people who it's a really big issue for will get humidity monitors that you can get like on Amazon for under $10.
Mm-hmm.
And there's outdoor ones and there's indoor ones. And then they'll try to make their indoor humidity closer to outdoor. Unless outdoor is just crazy high.
Like in Toronto in the summer.
Exactly.
Super humid. And then what about wind?
Wind. So this is kind of coming more from my Chinese medicine background, but in Chinese medicine, we really recognize that wind can actually stir things up in the body, and it can be a cause of migraines. So, sometimes we call it the evil wind, and there's wind cold when it's cold outside or cold and damp outside. And there's wind heat when it's a hot wind. But people who are sensitive to wind, you can tell that, people say, oh, this wind, I
don't like the wind. I gotta tell you, not that like it creates, wreaks havoc on your hair, but I just am not a fan of wind. I don't know what it is. Maybe this is it.
Yeah, I know. I think some of us just know like the wind just gets inside in a way that, doesn't feel good. Yeah. And then rarely I meet some people who love the wind, and I think they've all been guys, come to think of it.
Oh, okay.
So On a super windy day, and also wind's going to make allergies worse, right? Because it stirs up all the pollen and mold spores. And if you're allergic to anything outdoors, it's wind makes it far worse. So on super windy days, it might be better to limit your time outdoors or just avoid outdoors. And if you do go outside, to kind of protect your body, depending on the climate, you can wear scarves and hats, but in particular, protecting the back of your head, like the occiput area, the top of your neck, is a really good area to protect. So in fact, the whole back of your neck is a really good area to protect, in terms of it's a Chinese medicine belief that, goes back a long time. So that wind goes in the back of your neck. So keeping a scarf if it's cold out, or a lightweight scarf if it's not cold out, it's just, adds a little bit of protection.
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to pull your hood, you want to pull your hood up, or you want to put your scarf in there because it doesn't want to blow down the back of your jacket.
Exactly. Yeah.
So air purifiers, or like how do we, with the air that we breathe in the house to protect ourselves in that as a trigger?
Yeah. So, and allergies and migraines, histamine, these are all like topics that we could probably go into a whole nother, podcast on. But allergies and histamine intolerance and sinus congestion are all things I'll look at with migraine sufferers. And to mitigate allergies, there's a lot of people take medications, and there's also some really good natural things that work pretty well. And you can't necessarily control the outdoors, right? If you're allergic to things outdoors, but you can control your indoors. And I think it just makes an enormous difference. So the cleanliness of your house, like if dust is at all a factor, if you've been tested for allergies with those skin prick tests and dust is positive, then it's really good to keep your house more zen and not cluttered, and then carpets tend to collect dust, and fabrics. So it's, if possible, to not have carpets. And then if you do so, to vacuum them frequently and, get into the corners. And you might even want to wear a mask when you vacuum, because when you vacuum, it's going to stir up dust. There's dust-proof mattress covers and pillow covers that are really great. So that's dust. And then there might be other things in your house that are just coming in from outside that you're allergic to, like mold and, even pollens and things from outdoors, or if you're allergic to your pets. Then air filters can really do wonders. And basically, if you just get any HEPA air filter, it's going to make a big difference. So if you just go to Costco and get a HEPA air filter, that's going to make a big difference. And then there's some higher quality ones that are more expensive, and that probably work better. And the brands that I like I really like Air Oasis, which is from a company in Texas. It was designed by a doctor, and it tends to trap finer particles, because sometimes the mold will not stay in a whole spore. It'll break into little particles, and it's hard for regular HEPA filters to catch those particles. So Air Oasis is doing a good job, and they're not as expensive as the other really good filters. They're more moderate.
Yeah, because some of those ones can be thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think everything that Air IQ offers is, not Air IQ, Air Oasis is less than $1,000, and they have stuff that's less than $500.
Great.
And I like the company because you can email them and ask them, like, okay, I have this, I want to filter, this is what I want to filter, and in what size space, and then they'll recommend which model. And then Air IQ is also really good. And I think that's a little pricier, but that's another brand that I've seen good results with. And so if you do have allergies and you're going to pick a filter for one room, I think the bedroom makes most sense because that's where you're spending so much time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So another one we have is about methylation. So if someone has the MTHFR gene, and then the impact on migraines for that.
Right. So methylation, and have you talked about methylation on your show?
Yeah, I've got a podcast. It'll probably come out in January where we talk all about MTHFR. So we'll refer back to that episode, but for more detail. But yeah, as an overview, I guess.
Okay.
It's a massive topic.
It's a massive topic, yeah. And there's confusion around it. So when we first kind of discovered the MTHFR genetic mutations, which, it's a big topic in infertility in general. Yes. So a lot of us just went to testing those mutations right away, and just through a regular lab, they test the two most common ones. And you either have one copy, which is, called A, or you have two, which is called double A. And we used to, like, if somebody showed up with one copy of one of the mutations, we used to think, oh, they have, they have a problem methylating. But it turns out that's not quite accurate. So I just want to, and I know you're going to go more into this in that podcast, but it's the one that is more of a concern if you get those tested. And by the way, those are easily tested by LabCorp and Quest and basic labs as well. They're not considered like uncalled for expensive genetic testing like most genetic testing is. So the one to look for is the one that's called C677T. So just think of it starts with a C. And if you have just a single copy of it, so just a single A, it's estimated that methylation might be down by about 30%. And most people can easily overcome that. Now, if you have a double copy of that one, then it could decrease by more like 70%. And that's more when you definitely want to, support do methylation support. The other one is, the other genetic mutation is MTHFR A1298C. So just think the A one. And that one actually doesn't impact to the same extent as the C one. So that one, take that one more with a grain of salt. So I think kind of what I'm saying is a lot of us went a little overboard with thinking it was a big alarm. But basically, if you're under methylating, it can cause so many different problems in your body, and it can be a trigger for headaches. One easy way to test is by getting your homocysteine tested on your blood. And if homocysteine levels are high, which is above 8, then you could have, it's indicative of a problem with methylation and that you're under methylating. And if you get that result, then that might, warrant going further and testing the genetic mutations. And then to mitigate that, there's a lot of different things that can help methylation. You definitely need magnesium. You can also take your B vitamins in a methylated form, because then your body doesn't have to struggle to methylate them, and if they're active. And then other things that can help are the nutrient SAMe, and another nutrient called TMG for trimethylglycine, which is cheaper than SAMe. And SAMe and TMG can also help with mood. So if it looks like you're an undermethylator and that you have anxiety or depression, you could try SAMe or try TMG. And then if you feel a difference. So you can go by, if it's mood, you generally feel better. If you feel better when you take SAMe, then you can suspect that it's probably a good thing that your body is using. And if you want to go, because SAMe is a little more expensive, if you want to try trimethylglycine, it's cheaper and you might get the same results.
So are there any studies on if someone has one of these, has the MTHFR gene, I guess it's more of I think the C one you were saying, do they have a higher incidence of migraines? I don't know if that's even been studied.
I have not found anything on that. It would definitely would be worth looking, but there's nothing that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and what about someone that makes all these dietary changes? They do the elimination diet, and potentially they have MTHFR gene, and then all of a sudden these migraines become way worse and more frequent, and you're getting 10 to 15 a month and things like that. Like, what, have you seen anything like that?
So like if they're making dietary changes and taking supplements.
Yeah, taking some of the supplements and maybe things get worse. Like they had them beforehand, and obviously maybe a detox reaction, or maybe they've done things too quickly. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just talking to someone and she had experienced that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it might be that, and did she, do you know if she tested positive for the mutations?
I don't know if she did or not. She had just made some of the dietary changes, and it just like created a firestorm. Instead of feeling better, she just feels absolutely worse. So to me, there's like a major underlying thing going on here. Is either another intestinal permeability or gut infection, stress, obviously a whole host of things. But I'm just wondering, and I can't remember for sure if if she was positive for the MTHFR, but I'm just thinking.
And was it the dietary changes
That was a trigger? Yeah.
Was it the ones like eliminating the allergens?
Yeah, gluten, dairy, some of the top allergens, which then just made things worse for her.
So I would look at, to figure things out, I'd remove supplements just to see what works for her with diet. But certainly when you remove foods that you're intolerant of, you can have a rebound reaction that's similar to withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's interesting, we can have actually a level of addiction to foods that we're intolerant of, and sometimes feel okay when we're on them, and then when we remove them we can feel awful. But that that shouldn't last more than about 10 days of removal of the problem food. So if it's been going on more than 10 days, I would look to what she had started to eat and see if that's problematic. And it could be anything. It could be like, does she have a histamine problem? Is she eating too much histamine food, or what's going on with what she is eating? But I think doing a trial of removing supplements is a great idea. Mm-hmm. To not, and to be more systematic about the changes when someone's reactive, like take a few steps back, because that will happen to me where I'll design what I think is a perfect protocol for someone, and then they get worse. And I'm a believer that you really shouldn't feel worse to get better, except maybe, when you remove offending foods, you might feel worse for just very briefly. So, but like if you're doing detox with someone, like I believe it going at a level where they're not going to feel worse, because I think it's just too much for their bodies to handle. So if I give someone a protocol, I think it's great, and then they feel worse, I'll immediately pare it down and, get it down to bare bones, or just remove it and then just do one thing at a time, one change at a time, to see if we can identify what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she wasn't a client of ours, but it was, we take the same approach where it's basically, let's just take this down to the even when adding in supplements, to add them in one at a time, so then you know exactly that low and slow approach, what exactly it is, not making dietary changes at the same time, because otherwise you'll never figure it out. And sometimes I think it might be like people are taking things and it's, oh, all these things are good, but when you take them together, it could be this perfect storm, and then it could just, and in her case, it had flared like the migraines, and she's just feeling horrible.
And so if she is taking methylation supplements, especially in high doses, that could be a part of it, because not everybody needs those. And so it could be overkill.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to think about. It's like, not everybody needs help with that. It's less common than we think. So yeah, hopefully she'll become a client and you can evaluate what's going on, because I'm sure you could help her.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And as far as, so we did talk about some supplements. Any other ones for, you mentioned the ones for migraine, so the CoQ10, the riboflavin, and the magnesium. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, so let me think. And then the vitamin E for menstrual migraines, and
you had the carnitine and the lopiic acid.
Lipoic acid.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and that's basically like, if you think there's a mitochondrial issue, there are tests you can do for that. I prefer doing what we call an organic acids test, and there's different companies that do those. Do you use those?
No, we kind of start like with the basics of we look at the Dutch, we look at a LEAP MRT for food, and then we look at the GI map. And then if we want to dig deeper, we do the hair analysis. But yeah, definitely you can go down the testing rabbit hole too, right? But for an organic acid test, then do you do that frequently then, or how does that work?
I do that often if I think there's a mitochondrial issue, because doing the organic acids test, you can identify if there's just mitochondria, like what nutrients are missing for mitochondria. Like, is it the B vitamins? Is it lipoic acid? Is it CoQ10? Is it carnitine? Or you can also assess if there's actual mitochondrial damage, which takes a slightly different approach. And then you want to do things to help like build the structure of mitochondria. So I like that test for that. But just as a trial, going on what's been studied is the CoQ10 and the riboflavin. So I think those are things, if since they also help fertility and conception. Yeah, those are things that I think, and magnesium, which is for everything basically, would be good to try.
Absolutely. And so your recommendations for any resources, a book or a website or an app, anything that is your go-to right now?
So, and are you talking about for migraines specifically, or
anything you like for migraines, or like to highlight?
So I think that acupuncture is great for migraines.
Yeah.
And I think working with a functional medicine practitioner or nutritionist is really great, because then you can get to more root causes. If it's actually like there's a lot of muscle tension or neck pain, a lot of women will have neck and shoulder pain, back pain that comes with migraines, then it's nice to actually seek out some good body work. And I have some women who see chiropractors. I really like cranial osteopathy, which unfortunately there's not a lot of those practitioners, but if you have one around, they can do wonders. So those are like, modalities to go to. And then I think people will get a lot of great information to going to my main website, parishealingarts.com, and then just searching migraine, and you'll get my blogs. I think there's 5 now.
Those are 5 now? Yeah, they are awesome. They really dig into a lot of the stuff that we've talked about here. So they're very, very informative. So parishealingarts.com. Awesome.
Yeah. And they go a little bit more in depth into the stuff we talked about. And then I've been really interested lately in just histamine in general, which would be a great topic for a podcast for you, because histamine and hormones are really linked. And I'm thinking that my next blog post might be about that. But histamine reactions can cause migraines. But histamine is also really related to hormonal issues, because what histamine does is it raises estrogen. Histamine is a signaling molecule. It's actually considered a neurotransmitter. So as estrogen rises and falls, so does histamine. So if women get, it's one of the reasons why women can get headaches hormonally is at times when estrogen is high, histamine's higher. So if they have any problem with histamine, and, there's different levels of that. There's, mild reactions, and then there's more significant histamine intolerance. But it's really interesting, the connection between histamine and hormones. And so one of the things that can help with that, and sometimes you don't know, we think of histamine reactions, well, hay fever, hives, but like my headaches are a histamine reaction. Wheezing can be a histamine reaction. Anxiety can be. And PMS can be related to histamine. Mood disorders besides anxiety. So one way to tell, if you're wondering, like, do I have a histamine problem? I might have one of those, but not all of them, is if you have a migraine and you take an antihistamine and it gets better, that's an indication. Right? And so there's natural antihistamines that I love, and the ones that I like have good amounts of quercetin and bromelain, and then they tend to work really well. But just doing the test with, any over-the-counter antihistamine and see if that affects your headache is a really good clue that there might be a histamine involvement, and that you might need a little help with that, which, is a combination of watching histamine content in your diet and then maybe using natural antihistamines. And that can help a great deal.
Is there a natural one that you like? You said bromelain, and what was the other one? Sorry.
And quercetin. Yeah. Is it okay to mention brands?
Sure. Go for it. Okay.
So I really like Source Naturals called activated quercetin.
Okay. How do you spell that?
Quercetin is QUERCITIN.
Okay, awesome.
And that you can get very easily, at stores, online. And the dose of the quercetin and the bromelain in there is a really good dose that's really effective. And so what I recommend is, like, if you feel like you're high histamine because you have a lot of histamine symptoms, then to, take a loading dose, like take 2 capsules 3 times a day, or even 3 capsules 3 times a day for a few days. And then you go down to just taking it as needed. So for some people that might be like, if your headaches hit at night, to take it before you go to bed. And then, just take it whenever you feel histamine reactions. And like I said, we could probably talk for another hour on this whole histamine issue, because it's fascinating. And another thing that can cause high histamine, because you may be a person who never had a histamine problem, and then all of a sudden you do. And, you eat foods that are high in histamine and you get a headache.
Or even flushing too. I get that from wine. I get all of a sudden this like beet red face. I'm like, oh,
yeah. So it's a sign that there could, to check out SIBO, because SIBO it's just one of the things I look for when there's a lot of histamine reactions, and that's because of the bacteria. because there's some bacteria that make histamine in your gut and there's some that degrade it. And so if you have an overgrowth of histamine producing bacteria in your gut, then you'll have more histamine reactions. And often that's in the small intestine. So it's SIBO.
Mm-hmm.
And partly how you can tell if you have that is if you eat high histamine foods like fermented foods like sauerkraut, and you or even probiotics, like just a random probiotic that has a bunch of strains in it, and you feel worse, then that could indicate that there's an overgrowth of histamine producing bacteria and to get your gut checked out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bottom line is to dig deeper, right? So the migraines are and we're treating with conventional medicine, it's just looking at the wrong thing. It's just treating the migraine, and it keeps coming. And then sometimes they get worse, and then we're dealing with them for years and years. We've got people going through our couples coaching program, and they've had, migraines for years, and all of a sudden, now they're gone. And they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't had one in the last couple months. As we start working on gut health and deal with some of these things, it's amazing kind of what happens. And so with that, I'm sure you've got lots of success stories. Is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Recently I had a patient who's had hormonal migraines, ovulation and menstruation, like her whole life, and her mom had them as well. And so, every clockwork, every ovulation, every period, she would need to miss a day of work. And I was really determined to try to see her get through a cycle without a migraine. And so was she. So we kind of, like in going root cause, we figured out that there was structural components, like there's definitely nerves firing that caused pain in her neck. And she was seeing a chiropractor and me and timing it around ovulation and menstruation. And then she started the B2 and B6, which isn't specifically for migraines, but it's really good for PMS. And the vitamin E and magnesium. So she just started those 4 things. And then we also did acupuncture. And I was just really, really hoping, she's such a sweet person, and just really hoping we could get her through a cycle without a migraine. Mm-hmm. So it started that she had several cycles with no migraine and ovulation. And then now her last 2 cycles, she hasn't had a migraine during her period.
Wow.
So,
that's amazing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like jumping for joy over that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. And so you have got a program that's going to be launching very soon. It's a PCOS program, and you're offering the listeners a discount here. So if they go to myhormoneanswers.com, and the coupon code is FAB, F-A-B, and you get 30% off. Do you want to share a little bit about that program and what they can expect?
Yes. So it's a 6-week program to reverse PCOS, and was designed by my educational partner, Dr. Anita Sadate, who is a functional medicine gynecologist. And our aim is to have kind of do-it-yourself but guided programs on different hormone topics. And we started with PCOS early in this year. And so the next launch is January 12th. And it's basically a 6-week guided program where you go online and you get some, just brief lessons and things to do for the day. The purpose of it is to have it be functional medicine oriented. So we go through and dig into the root causes of PCOS and what you can do to fix them on your own. So women are getting great results, getting their periods back, getting their periods regular, losing weight, changes in hair patterns. So it's a great way to experience functional medicine as well without doing it individual.
Love it. Awesome. So definitely go to myhormonesanswers.com, and then you can enter the code FAB for your 30% discount. And thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, Laura. It's been awesome sharing your words of wisdom here around migraines. So super informative. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure, Sarah. And thanks for the work that you do.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey there, Sarah Clark here. So are you struggling to have your baby? First of all, please know that my heart goes out to you. I support couples worldwide who are struggling with infertility to conceive and have healthy babies. Women like Rita, who gave birth to her beautiful daughter after following my fertility coaching system. Or Danielle, who after 2 failed IUIs was able to get pregnant after a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call with me. So here's how you get my help for free. So I offer a free Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call. And on that call, I'll create a plan with you that is going to help you fast track your success. So this call is not for everyone. And I'm really picky about who I get to speak with. And I have a strict but totally reasonable criteria that needs to be met in order for us to move forward. So here's who I can help. So first of all, you need to be able to explore your infertility diagnosis in a new light. So this offers for people who are open-minded, they're coachable, and if you can do that and want to double or triple your chances at the fertility clinic or get pregnant, awesome. So let's get on the phone and chat. Also, you must be an action taker. So someone who's committed to seeing results, you're able to follow directions. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do anything bizarre. But if you're one of those people who like to consume a ton of information, but don't like to spend time implementing and seeing results, then the call's not really for you. So I only want to spend time with people who are genuinely committed to their own success. So just click on the link in the show notes and apply, or go to fabfertile.com and click on the free consult. So it's a really short application that just tells me about your health, how long you've been trying to conceive, and how soon you'd like to be pregnant. So seriously, this is going to be the best time you've ever spent on your fertility. Looking forward to chatting. Talk soon. Thank you for listening to Get Pregnant Naturally. Seriously, it means the world to me that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of upcoming episodes. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you're a U.S. resident, text FERTILE to 345-345. You'll be prompted to enter your email address and you'll receive our fertility yoga download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to your heart. These simple fertility yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. So for U.S. residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345-345. For non-U.S. residents, go to www.yogafreebie.com to access your special gift. That's www.yogafreebie.com to access the free fertility yoga download. And I love this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman, medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. Functional medicine is medicine by cause, not by symptom. Functional medicine practitioners don't in fact treat disease. We treat your body's ecosystem. We get rid of the bad stuff, put in the good stuff, and because your body is an intelligent system, it does the rest. Thanks for listening. Until next time.